Hello mathematicians and welcome to Number Corner. For Number Corner today, we will be looking at our calendar grid. You won't need any materials today. We are going to turn over all of the calendar markers for our third set, April 10th through 13th. Let's start with the first marker. As you look at this marker, here are some things to think about. What do you notice about each one? What do you think the next marker in the set will be? How are the markers in this set alike and different? How many sections is each bed divided into? What fraction can be used to represent the sections of the garden beds? Take a moment to look at our first marker. Think about what you notice. Now you may have noticed a few different things. You may have noticed that we have a garden bed on this marker. We also looked at a garden bed in our first set of calendar markers. Remember, those garden beds were rectangular. You may have noticed that this garden bed is circular. You may also have noticed that this garden bed is divided into 4 sections, 4 equal sections. You may have been thinking, well, I know that if it's in 4 equal sections, it's showing me fourths. In each section, we can say we have 1/4 of the garden bed. You may have noticed some other things too. Let's see if we can make a prediction about what our next marker might look like. Think of a prediction. Let's see if your prediction is correct. Is this what you thought the garden bed would look like? Take a moment to notice. Think about what you notice on this calendar marker. Now you may have noticed a few different things. Show a connection if you notice that we still have the same size circular garden bed. We do, it's the same size. But it's separated into a different amount of sections. This garden bed has 1, 2, 3 different sections. Give me a thumbs up if you know what each section is called. Oh, if you're thinking each section is 1/3, show a connection. Good thinking. How are our 2 garden beds alike and different? Now, we know they're both circular. We said that already. But what's different about them? If you're thinking the parts in the garden bed are different, show a connection. Yeah, we have less parts or sections on this garden bed. We have 1, 2, 3. Which garden bed is showing larger parts? Are the parts on this garden bed larger, or are the parts on this garden bed larger or bigger? If you're thinking the parts on this garden bed are bigger, good thinking. We have less sections, so each one can be bigger. See if you can make a prediction about what our next marker will look like. Take a moment to think. Was your prediction correct? Were you thinking we'd have less sections again? Oh, show a connection if that's what you thought. That's good thinking. Take a moment to think about what you notice. Now you may have noticed that this garden bed is only in 2 sections. What do we call each section when one object is split into 2 equal parts? Oh, if you're thinking halves, show a connection. Good thinking, they're split in half. If we're looking at the calendar marker for April 11th and the calendar marker for April 12th, which sections are larger? Are 2 sections here or are 3 sections here? If you're thinking, well, these 2 sections are bigger, 1/2 is bigger than this 1/3, well, that's good thinking. Let's have a look at our last garden bed and see what we noticed. Can you make a prediction about what this garden bed might look like? Let's see if you're correct. Were you thinking it would be a hole? Thumbs up or thumbs down. If you were thinking it would be the whole garden bed, good work making a prediction from what you noticed. Of all 4 markers, could you tell me which marker is showing the biggest sections? If you're thinking the marker for April 13th, that's good thinking. We have one big section or a hole. On the 12th, we have our garden bed divided in half into 2 sections. On the 11th, our garden bed is in 3 sections or thirds. And on the 10th, our garden bed is in 4 sections or fourths. Let's take our observations and let's fill in our calendar grid observation chart for these 4 days. Remember, we're thinking, is this a whole or a set? How many parts do we see? And what are our observations? Now I want you to think first, as we looked at these markers, were we looking at one whole object and splitting it into pieces? Or were we looking at many objects? If you're thinking it was one whole garden bed, that's good thinking. Give yourself a pat on the back. We're talking about the whole. We have one whole garden bed in 4, 3, 2, and 1 part. That helps us to think about our how many. How many parts do we have in each calendar marker? If you were thinking, we start with 4 parts, and then we go down to 3 parts, then 2 parts, then 1 whole part. That's good thinking. Now let's think about some of those observations we had. When we looked at the 10th, we noticed how this garden bed is now circular, unlike in our first set when it was rectangular. We also noticed our 1, 2, 3, 4 parts that the garden bed was broken into. On the 11th, we talked about thirds. Each part we see is 1/3. On the 12th, we talked about halves. Each part is 1/2. The garden bed is broken into 2 equal parts. And on the 13th, the garden bed is 1 whole part. There's no lines in the middle separating it in any way. Thank you, mathematicians, for observing this 3rd set of calendar markers with me today. Your job in Seesaw is to share some of our observations with your teacher. I will see you next time for Number Corner.